All right, so I'm going to talk about my mother's life in 3 acts, and hopefully it's not too long-winded, and I'm probably going to blubber a little bit, but in my mom's spirit, there's going to be some interesting bits and some funny bits, okay? So my mother's life had 3 distinct acts. Act 1 was the rebel. Act 2 was the caretaker, and Act 3 was the mayor. Of East Hampton. I think I was going to cry in the first sentence. We got a ways to go. All right. Act 1, the rebel. She was born in 1933 and grew up in Manhattan. She adored her father and looked up to her brother Johnny. Her relationship with her mother had highs and lows, but they stayed close enough that our family would make trips out to East Hampton when Jay and I were kids. Mom's house on Buell Lane was her mother's house before her, as Jay told you. Mom had several clear memories of her childhood that always stayed with her. One story she would repeat was when she was a little girl and wrote a note to the Easter Bunny asking, "Dear Easter Bunny, are you real? Please answer yes or no." In the morning, she woke up to find the reply and said yes or no. Another story was how on some Saturdays, she and her friend Barbara would find a busy street corner in Manhattan, stop and look up. And when enough other people stopped to look up, they would giggle and run off. Complete derelicts. My mom had nostalgia for a New York City school called Nightingale, even if she didn't understand some of the lessons. One class tried to prep the girls for real life by having them balance a book on their heads and walk across the room without it dropping. But it was during these years she discovered a sense of self that set her down her own path in life. And a story that I recently heard from her dear friend Mary Ellen, who lives down in Texas, was how Nightingale would let the girls ditch their school uniforms once a month and wear a dress of their choice. As you can imagine, this quickly devolved into a competition for many of the girls as they tried to outdo one another. So my mom's answer was to simply wear her school uniform on those days. And this sense of independent thought really came back and helped her later in life. So she had many more stories about growing up. She remembers the citywide blackouts during World War II and how freaky it was. And I don't think any of us can imagine what New York City would look like without any lights. So her family decided to leave the city and move out here to escape danger, but safety wasn't always assured. And she remembered the fear when reports of a German U-boat surfacing off of Amagansett made the rounds. So after the war, her family moved back into the city and she was groomed as a debutante. And she made her debut as a teenager, I guess, I don't know how old. But this meant getting all dressed up and going to a stuffy ball in Manhattan. And she wasn't really into it, but she went along with the ritual. In her house, she has pictures of that night in her full gown, and she looks both beautiful and out of place if you know her, which you all do. So post-debut, she was set up with a young man from a very rich family, but after 1 or 2 dates, she said, no, his feet smell. And that was it. So she was always independent, even if she didn't appreciate the power in that time in her life. So she continued to live in New York City during college, and I don't know much about those years apart from 2 stories that she would tell. One that she laughed at and one that she regretted. The funny one was that during her college interview, she was asked what types of books she liked to read. She wanted to say, I really like books on philosophy, but she was nervous and couldn't get the words out and said, I like philosophical books. So she was embarrassed, but she got into school anyway. And the one she regretted was an opportunity to meet with a professor about a topic that really interested her. And I think it was about studying early childhood development. So leading up to the meeting, she got herself so anxious that she was just too afraid to go. And she didn't go. And that window of opportunity closed and she never forgot it. So it bothered her that she let her fear get in the way and wondered if her life would have taken a slightly different path if she had just gone. This didn't matter all that much to her as she got older, but it was a story that she told me several times. After college, as my brother said, she made her way up to Cambridge, Massachusetts and was a teacher for young kids, and she loved that part of her life. Which leads into Act 2, with Mary the caretaker. So when she married my dad, she committed to the typical wedding vows of staying with him for better or worse, in sickness and in health. She said yes and lived through all of them. Some of the happiest years of her life were when Jay and I were bouncing off the walls as little kids. She used to call me her orangutan because I was snuggly as a toddler, and she loved it. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this, and I have a clear, distinct memory of when she told me, honey, I can't pick you up anymore because you're too big. And of course, I'm sure she wished she could have kept up, so that never had to happen. So growing up, Mom was a constant. Jay and I always had clean clothes, a hat on cold days, and food in our lunch boxes. But my dad was the patriarch. So much so that I didn't really pay much attention to Mom. So I didn't know how amazing and funny she was. But I started to learn this during my teenage years. So there was a time when I wouldn't want to sleep, so I would sneak out of my room after everyone was asleep and go downstairs and watch TV, or even leave the house and go see friends at the school field. This meant I got to bed late, which meant I woke up late. My mom asked me once, why are you sleeping so late, honey? And I lied and said, oh my, I just have insomnia. I'm looking at you. The next night, when I went to bed, there was a rubber mallet on my pillow that she got from the hardware store. There was no note, just that rubber mallet. And I kept that for many years because of how funny it was on so many levels. So Jay and I eventually went off to college. My mom and dad were on their own. She decided to go back to school for a master's degree in, I think, public policy, something like that. At the end of her education, she saw the school's counselor. She was all excited about the world of job opportunities in front of her. And the counselor told her, honey, if you had taken the money you spent on this degree and given it to a political party, you'd have a job now. So she never did get a job in that field. So in the early 90s, our dad started his long decline and Mom became his full-time caregiver. And it was overwhelming, but I never saw any sign of her breaking. She took care of her dad the way she took care of Jamie when we were growing up. And that leads to Act 3, the mayor of East Hampton. So my dad's death, as you can imagine, left a huge space in her life because she had spent decades attending to the needs of others to the extent that it just defined who she was. So now there was no one to take care of, and she didn't know what to do with her time. But of course, if there was a blessing in my dad's final year, it was that they moved back to this house on Buell Lane. And she didn't know it at the time, but what an amazing cradle that would turn out to be for her rebirth. So as you know, my mom had amazing empathy, and she took such joy in the happiness of others, and this created a virtuous cycle. And the quality attracted so many people to her that within a few years, that's when we started calling her the mayor of East Hampton, because she seemed to know everyone. And during my late 20s and early 30s, I would come down here in the summer with over a dozen friends, and we'd pitch tents in our backyard. There would be sleeping bags all over the house, and she loved it. And this was her kind of party. Young people having fun, cooking good food, and laughing nonstop. And since we had so many bonfires on the beach, s'mores were always on the menu. And that meant marshmallows were always in her house. So she invented a game of tossing the bag onto the rafters in her porch. And this was probably 25 years ago, and just a week before she died, a dear friend of mine, Yanni, stopped by with his family to visit her. And she laughed so hard when she was trying to tell me on the phone about the call she had with him when he was driving out. And she said, oh, Yanni, I'm going to have to go to the store and get some marshmallows. To which Yanni said, don't worry, Mary, I always keep some in the car. So as news of her passing spread to my friend group in Boston, I, of course, got a lot of texts of love and support and marshmallow references. So it was during this third act that I really got to know my mom, and I'm fortunate that we had such a great relationship. So we both atoned for our regrets during my teenage years, and nothing was left unsaid. For decades, we spoke for a few minutes nearly every day. I'd call her when going to work, or grabbing lunch, or driving. And as Jay said, Mom just loved living here. She loved the beauty, she loved the community, she loved her house, and her garden. She talked about the memories we made as being stars that she put on the house. And the biggest star was Amy and me having our wedding in her backyard 19 years ago. Okay, we're winding down, folks. Through much of her 70s and 80s, she walked everywhere in town, and it gave her time to think, and she usually thought about music. She had always loved music, and it played an increasingly important role in her life as she got older. One winter morning, she and I were walking back from the coffee shop, and we weren't talking. I think it was too cold. We were bundled up. And she randomly asked me, "How does it go again?" Womp bump boom 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 boom. I said, "Mom, womp bump boom bump bump bamboo." She's like, "Oh, okay." And that was the whole extent of the chapter. So as her daily activities over the past couple of years naturally dialed back, they were still as full as far as she was concerned. The golden pair, coffee with her gang, and to go down to Main Beach and say hi to her family down there and look at the ocean. And then in the afternoon, she would stare at the garden and have calls with me, Jay, and a few lifelong friends that she kept in touch with. And through it all, there was music on. So she had a speaker next to her chair, bathed in the music of Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles, Andy Williams, and Billy Joel. And as Michael said, when she went to bed at night, her brain would automatically start reciting poems and lyrics. She didn't sleep much in her later years, and she didn't try to memorize poetry. It's just where her brain went. And she's the only person I know who looked forward to bed because it was her brain's practice time. So up until the end, she was independent, funny, and focused on joy. And I think she realized in her third act that happiness was a choice. To my boys, Cesar, Jay, and Robert, it's important to remember that. Happiness is a choice. And to have it, you need to focus on friends, laughter, and music. So in the spirit of friends, thank you all for sharing your heartbeats with my mom. Of course, time is the most precious thing we have. All right, in the spirit of laughter, what do you call a rabbit hiding underneath the Montauk Lighthouse in a storm? The nor'easter bunny. All right. And in the spirit of music, I'll say, Mom, we cry because your song has ended, but we'll smile again every time we sing it. We love you. Now, who here remembers how my mom would say goodbye? Brooke, Terry, how would she say goodbye?
See you later, alligator.
It's one way.
Have a day.
Have a day.
Have a day.
She got that from my son, Jay's, when he was like 5 years old or something. They were on the phone, and he said, "Okay, goodbye, Granny, I love you, have a day." And she thought it was the funniest thing, so she said it ever since. So, in that spirit, on the count of 3, I want everybody to say, "Mary, have a day." Okay? 1, 2, 3.
Mary, have a day. Amen.
Thank you all. If we could just take a moment and think of a fond or funny memory of my mom, I know that she'll feel it.